Welcome to the Galactic Table. I'm Caleb, and today we're going to be discussing the Book of Boba Fett. I want to talk about the series as a whole, not dive in super deep on Easter eggs and references and episode per episode, and more of just kind of what I got out of it, what I thought of it, some of the theatrical meanings behind things, and story and character development, so on and so forth. I imagine this episode could be pretty long, so I'll give a little summary of what I thought of it for those of you that don't want to stick around for a long video, and for those of you that do, then we can have some discourse about it and discuss it in the comments as well. And a little disclaimer on that: if you really like this series and you really enjoyed it, then feel free to comment about it, but be nice to those who respectfully do not like the series and didn't get something out of it, and same vice versa, because I want everybody to be able to discuss how they felt about it, whether you liked it or not, as long as we do it nicely. My summary was that I did enjoy the Book of Boba Fett. I liked the whole thing. I had fun with it. The very end of the season was when I started to feel apprehensive about it, because episode 5 and 6, I feel, really kind of threw things off from the main story that we were being told, and that made me nervous about how the finale was going to go, because I couldn't find a way of how they were going to really resolve everything and wrap everything up, especially with how much build-up there was, and without a lot of answers behind everything. And so the whole Mando episode, and then Luke and Grogu training and all that sort of thing, I just felt like we really got pulled out of the story that we had been told up till that point. So then when we go back, it was just kind of hard to get back into it. So that's kind of my summary of how I felt on it. So I'll go a little bit more in depth. If you want to stick around, then maybe pause and get something to drink or a snack or something, because we're going to discuss some things. I really enjoyed how the season started off. I feel like that was a big point of contention with everybody, was the story that was being told, trying to understand Boba's motives for what he was doing and what he wanted to do, and trying to understand the change behind his character and why they were doing what they were doing with his character. I really like that. I'm a big fan of world building and the in-depth storytelling, and even, no explosions and no blasters going off, and just really seeing Boba on his own, trying to change, trying to figure out the change, and trying to transform into a different person. I really liked that. To me, that goes into a much kind of deeper meaning for our own personal journeys in the real world. Being able to change and being able to become something better and be more and do more. And I like that a lot. I know a lot of people were upset about that. They didn't like Boba being soft, and even in the series he was called soft, and he didn't really seem to deny it either. But I think there were some points where I feel like Boba showing mercy and being a nice guy wasn't out of line with what he was prior. In the comic book Age of Rebellion, we see Boba Fett tracking down an ex-bounty hunter, and this ex-bounty hunter has a partner with him who he turns on, shoots him, and leaves him for dead in the desert. There's some more thematrical matching for us. But Boba Fett comes across his partner dying in the sand, and he stops and gives the man water, which is, to me, being merciful and showing compassion. Yes, that man wasn't the target he was after, but that was still, as far as ruthless, menacing Boba Fett goes, he didn't have to stop. He could have just left that guy there or shot him and put him out of his misery, but he didn't. The man still died, but the fact that Boba stopped and gave him water and showed some compassion. So I think that could have always been there with Boba. And I know in his Clone Wars arc as a kid, he didn't want people to die or to suffer. He had this argument with Aurra Sing, and he wanted his revenge on Mace Windu, and he wanted to get after Mace Windu specifically. He didn't really want to hurt or kill anybody else. He was going to use them to get to Mace Windu, but he didn't really want to hurt or kill them. the ruthlessness comes later, especially with trying to establish that image as a bounty hunter and as the best bounty hunter, and trying to follow Django's footsteps, to where now he wants to break away from that and be something different. And I was totally with that. I really enjoyed all the Tusken stuff and all the time he spent with the Tuskens and becoming part of that tribe. I thought it was really great, and him just kind of diving into this image, because, you know, he came out of the Sarlacc, he didn't have his armor anymore, you know, was a really close brush with death. And sometimes when we experience things in our lives, we could cling on to something, and that's what can save us, and you really immerse yourself in it and try to hang on to it. A lot of us do that with Star Wars. I know I've gone through some really hard things in my life, and that was always something I could turn to, and when things get especially hard, you could just kind of immerse yourself in it. Think of how these characters would, what they would do, how they would handle things, and we can learn from this fictional story life lessons that we could apply to our real life. And so I thought that was really interesting to see that Boba Fett is now, you know, he was taken captive by the Tuskens, but he's lost, he's armorless, far from home, so to speak, and so he really just immerses himself in this Tusken culture and wants to be a part of it until that's ripped from him. Another thing that really stood out to me that I liked was we wanted to know, why did he want to be a crime lord? I know he said something to Fennec about not wanting to work for idiots who were going to get him killed anymore. And I really like that too, because I feel like in a real world sense that could speak to anybody in any situation. But me, you know, I've been a 9-to-5 worker all my adult life, and I feel like, you know, that resonates to me of the low level, you know, just entry level workaday chumps that work for companies who are the real, like, backbone, who face the public or, you know, get the main grunt work done. And they're generally seen by those above them as a dime a dozen and expendable. I like the thought of Boba Fett thinking that he could go in, become the new crime lord, and make things better for his people, so to speak. He calls Fennec our kind. I'm tired of our kind dying for, you know, these idiots. And, you know, like if you're a regular grunt worker in a 9-to-5, you know, how often does it seem that, like, the higher ups above you are idiots that don't know about anything going on? You know, maybe not like your manager, because I know in a lot of cases managers are out there with you, they're dealing with the same crap, but the higher up the chain you go, the more detached you get from everything else that's going on and the things that the people that work for you are experiencing. And, you know, they make decisions and send it down the line and send it down the line, and by the time it reaches the bottom, you think, do they even have any idea of what their own company is experiencing or what we experience? You know, they seem like idiots. They, like, you know, they're making decisions from behind a desk in lots of cases in a completely different location, maybe a different city or state even. You might be out on your smoke break or your lunch break, and you're talking to your coworkers, and you just feel like, you know, if we could just get in there, you know, we could do it better. And I kind of feel like that was sort of a motivation for Boba Fett. You know, I could get in there, he could do it better. You know, how much money could be made, how many lives could be saved, he says. So I really like that. That was something that resonated with me, especially when you're at the bottom and you're the expendable grunt. More than that, I also think it's interesting just within the story itself of Boba Fett wanting to break away from the bounty hunting lifestyle, because we see in Attack of the Clones, during the Battle of Geonosis, Jango Fett blasts off with his jetpack from the side of Count Dooku down into the battle. You know, Mace Windu dispatches him, and he dies alone in the sand of Geonosis. And he does it all in the name of protecting the interests of his employer. Boba Fett blasts off Jabba's sail barge, trying to protect the interests of his employer, and ends up in the Sarlacc pit, about to be dead. Cad Bane, at the end of the series, gets stabbed in the chest, trying to protect the interests of his employer. Nearly dying a brutal death alone. It seems to be the way that it ends for most bounty hunters. So I like Boba Fett trying to break away from that. I know one of the points of contention in this series was Boba not wearing his helmet a lot and showing his face and showing the kindness, showing mercy, and I was okay with that. As a fan of Boba Fett, he's always been my favorite character ever since I was little. There was that fan part of me where I did want to see him with his helmet on more, but to me it makes sense because the helmet is a symbol of fear. The whole time he was a bounty hunter, he always had the helmet on. You're tracking bounties, you're tracking your prey, and this, you got an expressionless T-visor hunting you down. And so I feel like the helmet is a symbol of fear, and he wants to rule with respect instead of fear. So it's more, I guess, respectful to show his face. It's more vulnerable, and it's just being more open and honest, I guess, with the people he's trying to rule over as the daimyo, to be vulnerable with them and show people what he looks like. You know, when he first goes to the mods, which I will say, I didn't like the mods. I wasn't with the mods. I do think they could have worked in Star Wars, but I'll get to them after this point I'm trying to make. Whenever Boba Fett recruits the mods, he takes off his helmet. You know, at first he's crunking on them with his helmet on, and then when he changes to showing some understanding and compassion, he takes the helmet off and reveals his face. And I think that goes in line with what he's trying to do with rule by respect and not fear, because he took the helmet off to be less intimidating. With that, I think I understand why he had the helmet off so much. Now, the mods, when they showed up in episode 3, I wasn't with them. I'm still not with them. I was more okay with them after that, and then when they showed up again more heavily in the finale, I still wasn't feeling them that much. I think if they were on Coruscant, they could work, or if their just aesthetic was redone, that they could work. Like, I've heard lots of good points about them, you know, youth culture being against the status quo and trying to break away of what they've grown up in and been surrounded by. So, you know, you get the bright colors, you get them trying to keep everything clean. And that's a good idea. It sounds good on paper, but it's not. It wasn't done well. It wasn't executed well. The just the bright colors and just the weird that just kind of threw everything off. And I know a lot of people felt weird about the mods. I think if they just fit the Star Wars aesthetic a little bit more, because, you know, modifications have always been a thing in Star Wars. There have always been people with cybernetics. So I think if they had just fit the aesthetic a little more, then it would have been better. And if their speeders were a lot faster, then it could have been better. But that's all I really got to say about the mods. My personal biggest points of contention with the series was episodes 5 and 6. Seeing Mando again, and the whole arc of that episode with the Darksaber and going back to his clan and getting the backstory of Night of a Thousand Tears with the armor. Like, it was all really good storytelling, and it was super awesome seeing that, but I feel like it had pulled us so far away from the story we were being told, and a story that I was really enjoying being told, that after those episodes, it was just really hard to get back into it and to almost care about that story. Because now they're getting you so hyped for Mando Season 3 that you don't care about the rest of Boba's story anymore. And so I feel like it was a mistake to do that, because when Boba showed up in Mandalorian Season 2, I saw lots of memes and jokes about, you know, people forgetting about Din Djarin and going to Boba Fett, but I feel like it was done really well, because we got Boba in Chapter 14. He got his time to shine, kicking ass on all the stormtroopers, and it was super cool and, you know, badass Boba Fett moment. But he had his time to shine in that episode, and then from there, he was prominent in the rest of the season, but he didn't overshadow the story that was being told. I feel like Din Djarin and Grogu and Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka, while all amazing and super awesome to see, did overshadow the story that was being told. And so I feel like that was a mistake. They could have been in there, but diminish it. If most of a single episode was about Din Djarin and maybe getting his new ship or whatever, or, when he went back to his clan, and we got just even most of one episode that was like that, I think I would have been okay with it. But 2 episodes where we barely go back to the story that we were being told at all was just distracting, and you find yourself asking, where's Boba Fett? And there's tons of jokes about where was Boba Fett. And so I feel like that could have been a mistake for them to have done that. Other than that, I feel like my highlight of the entire series, as far as the story we were supposed to have been told, was the entrance of Cad Bane. I almost like episode 6 more than the finale because I feel like the entrance of Cad Bane was so well done. That episode was really good. We got Luke Skywalker training with Grogu and seeing Ahsoka again. It was super awesome. And then when I saw Cad Bane enter, I didn't even care about the whole Luke thing anymore because I was so excited about Cad Bane. He was my favorite character from the Clone Wars. And so seeing him show up in live action was super awesome. And I feel like it was done perfectly. I know a lot of people thought he looked weird or looked strange or didn't look like other Duros in Star Wars and didn't look like the way he did in the Clone Wars. I thought he was perfect. I could see how they could have easily used some effects to bring his mouth just a little bit lower, and I think that would have helped with his appearance, but I was really pretty much okay with the way he looked. I felt like he was really unsettling to look at. He did look off, and he did look unsettling, and I feel like that didn't do anything but help with his menacing intimidation. And I hate to say it, but I think all the parts with Cad Bane were probably my favorite parts of the season finale. What I was worried about with episodes 5 and 6 was that it would be really hard for them to wrap everything up and resolve everything in a single episode. And that's pretty much how I felt like it went down. I liked it. I thought it was a really good episode. If it was the episode before the last one, then I feel like it would have been really good because there was lots of shooting, lots of destruction, lots of fighting in this, and people's lives were at stake. And if it maybe would have ended with them chasing off the Pikes and the Pikes retreating, and maybe even Fennec still assassinating, the leaders, all the leaders of the Gatras and the Pike leader and the mayor, and then ending there and maybe Boba and Cad Bane's duel not happening yet, I feel like it would have been a really fun, action-packed episode. And then in the next episode you could get Boba versus Cad, and then maybe, Crimson Dawn coming in, or the bigger threat, something that ties it into something bigger instead of just the Pikes and their grunt soldiers, shooting up the town. So, I don't know. There's a restaurant I really like. Some of you may know of it. It's called Steak and Shake, and their food is super good. They got really good burgers, but when they first serve you that food, the burgers are really small, and they give you a small handful of fries, and there's a part of you where that burger tastes really good, but you feel kind of empty inside because you look at it and you see how tiny everything is, and you're just kind of like, well, this is it. You eat it, and it tastes good, and you like it, but you kind of just wish there was more substance, I guess. Boba killing Cad Bane was a perfect representation of Boba overcoming everything that he had been trying to overcome the entire series, because Cad Bane was kind of a representation of everything bad that Boba used to be. As a fan, I was very upset that we just got Cad Bane in live action and then he gets killed. I think it was what was right for the story, but the fan in me wishes it didn't happen because I want to see more Cad Bane. I know there's a lot of speculation about Cad Bane still being alive because of the blinking chest box that he had. I think he might be permanently dead because Star Wars Time had an article about a rumor, just a rumor, that the finale was what they actually filmed first, and at the time they did have the idea of having Cad Bane in the bacta tank for the post-credits sequence. And then sometime during the rest of filming, they decided to make it Cobb Vanth and scrap the idea of using Cad Bane. So seeing Cad Bane laying in the sand with the blinking lights on his chest could have just been the remains of a scrapped idea. And that's why we had that weird shot of him laying in the sand with that thing blinking. Because it was what was filmed first, and that was still an idea that they were going to do, and then later they said never mind. So we're just kind of left with that shot to make up what we want. I guess it still leaves the door open if they wanted to do something with them, although I don't think that would be best for Boba's arc. I feel like it would undermine his arc. I definitely want more Cad Bane in live action, but maybe in the Kenobi series or in the Andor series. I think they're supposed to be doing a Lando series, so if that takes place during an early Imperial era with a Donald Glover Lando, then it could be a really good time to bring in Cad Bane again, and maybe he could have his Bad Batch look, because I thought that was pretty cooler. And on the subject of Cad Bane, it's my one time to do a little I told you so thing, and that's Cad Bane having a felt hat. Anytime I've ever seen any rendition of Cad Bane's hat, it's always been in leather with the really wide brim. In the Bad Batch, they shortened the brim up, and just the way it looked like when it fell off his head and rolled, I was like, that's felt. Anyways, I think that's most of my thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett. I really enjoyed it. I feel like I'm on a totally opposite side of the fence from most people because I really enjoyed the story that we were being told first over what ended up happening. I don't think there will be a season 2 with the way that they, even though it felt quick and rushed, since that story is resolved, I don't know what other story they would have to tell now. I definitely think that we probably can and will see Boba again in Mando Season 3. Maybe not as heavily featured, probably not as heavily featured, and for sure not as heavily featured as Din Djarin was. But I do think we probably will see Boba in Mando Season 3, and probably Fennec as well. But those are pretty much my thoughts on it. I did really enjoy it. I really liked it. Boba's always been my favorite since I was a little kid, and I just hope we get to see more of him going forward. So, what did y'all think of the Book of Boba Fett? Let me know. We could talk about it respectfully, and I'll catch y'all next time.